Political panel, Megan Hayes and Maura Gillespie. Megan served as a director of message planning for the Biden administration. Maura previously advised both former Speaker John Boehner and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republicans both. So, control room, I believe we have a compilation of some sound taken from a recent focus group of swing voters in Michigan who supported President Trump in the most recent election, but might be having some misgivings. Please play that.
By putting these tariffs in and terrorizing the world, now things are just going to get more expensive.
I feel like a lot of his actions have just been disruptive and creating chaos.
I was voting for him based off of the economy the first time around, and I'm seeing a significant decline.
Megan, since you're at the table, you get the first question. One focus group does not a political dynamic make. But it is interesting, and this focus group has sort of been making the rounds in Washington this week. How much, as someone who is a Democrat, interested in any possible fissures within the Trump coalition, how much stock do you put in this?
I put a lot of stock in this. These are swing voters that were Biden voters that then turned to Trump. These are voters that will go back to Democrats in the midterms and in 28. I think that if the economy does not start to improve and we continue to see the chaos, these voters will go back to Republicans in the midterms. Again, that won't
go back to Democrats.
I'm sorry, Democrats. Thank you. That won't impact Donald Trump and his political capital, but it will impact Congress and it will affect 28.
Maura, your take on it?
You know, I think that we're seeing this play out. I agree with Megan that if Democrats can get leadership and actually have a plan to move forward, yes, those voters will look for somebody to support. But right now, I think there are a lot of voters who feel politically homeless. They are very frustrated by the chaos that Donald Trump is causing the Republican Party. And you're right, he does not have political capital to be worried about because he's a lame duck president. But on the same side, you then have people like Chuck Schumer, who are an inconsistent leadership. You've got rifts happening there between he and Nancy Pelosi, and just a silence on the House side. So there's going to need to be some sort of shakeup here before the midterms, or you may see a lot of people sitting out this election.
Megan, I want to ask you about Michigan, because if what you're believing is true, it could be significant. There was a 234,000 vote shift from 2020 to 2024 in Trump's direction in Michigan. That's a lot. Few focus group, I'm reassessing, may be important, but it seems like a lot more has to happen for Michigan and the mentality that went for a 7-state swing state sweep for Trump to change.
Yes, but that was only at the presidential level. They still elected a Democrat to the Senate.
Slotkin, we heard.
So that they are not just solely Republican voters. They voted for Donald Trump for the economy, as these focus groups are saying. So if there is not change there, they will not vote for a Republican moving forward. But to Maura's point on people being homeless, I agree with her. And I also think if the Democrats do not get their act together and get some different leadership going here, these Democrats in Congress are going to get primary too. So we could see a lot of changes moving into the midterms.
So since you brought it up, Megan, let's dig into that big if. There is this conversation about what is the future of Chuck Schumer? What is the future of the generational Democratic leadership, at least in Congress? What do you think?
I think that Schumer needs to do what Nancy Pelosi did and look for a way to step aside for a new generation of people.
Right away or at the end of this 2-year cycle?
I'm not sure what the best thing is for the Congress. I'm not an expert in the Senate, so I leave that to them to decide. But it is very clear that the Democrats in this country and the Senate and the House want new leadership. They want younger leadership. And so I do think it would be smart for him to start to think of an exit plan and to have some new leadership.
Maura, I would like your perspective on this because you work for someone who I know very, very well, covered him for years, John Boehner. He dealt as Speaker with an insurgency within his own party, younger, aggressive, more ideologically motivated members, and ultimately had to, not because he necessarily wanted to, he managed it as best he could, but ultimately had to bow to their rising influence. Is that something you're seeing playing out on the left?
Well, I'll say that John Boehner wanted to leave before that happened. So there was that kind of, he had already looked for a strategy out, but he was also looking to pass the torch. He wanted to pass the torch before then. And if you'll remember, Eric Cantor lost his primary to David Bratt
Yes.
and wasn't able to do so. So, but I will say that would be a great strategy for Chuck Schumer. He's not up for re-election until 28. So he has time, but if he wanted to bring somebody else into leadership, almost act like a mentor in a way and help them through this process. But I do think that it's well past time for the Democrats to look for a leadership that can bring in new voters and galvanize a base that they had long purported to have but largely left because of this, moral superiority they purported, they kind of put forth during this last election that rubbed voters the wrong way. And they need to find a way to have a message that's not just anti-Trump, but has a path forward and looking to something that they can provide. What's the why, and then what's the how to get things done?
And Megan, right now, this recess week, when Congress is not in Washington, the biggest thing happening in Democratic circles is Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are going around Nevada, Colorado. They're pulling in 20,000, in some venues 30, 50,000 people just to talk about politics and the fight against the oligarchy. AOC is a potential primary challenger to Chuck Schumer. How much does all this feed together?
I think it feeds together a lot. I think that they're out there galvanizing the base, which is super important. I think they are both more left than the middle of the country and the middle of the Democratic Party probably is, and where we're going to win. But I do think it is important to get people out there. It shows that they're fighting. It's sound bites. It's on the news. But I just don't think that the rest of the country is where the far left is, like Bernie Sanders or AOC. So I do think we need to come to terms and we need to have some real leadership. And I just don't think that Schumer is providing that for us right now.
Megan Hayes and Mara Gillespie. Megan gets the first and the last word. Mara, I promise I will make it up to you on your next visit here, whether it's via Zoom or here at the desk.